This is Andrew Wicklund from Project Risk Consultants. We're going to go into step 5 of the 7-step risk analysis process. So we've loaded uncertainty on our project. Now maybe not all projects based on where you're at, bid level or what have you, have a full risk register. However, if you do have a risk register, that's what we're going to look at now, our risk events or items external to the schedule that really should be linked in because they may have an impact on the schedule. So when you think about risk events, they're basically activities that may or may not occur. So from a scheduling point of view, if you start to think, oh, if a risk occurs, where would it affect the logic network? That's kind of where we're going to go. So under the risk menu, we looked at uncertainty first, or productivity. That's our 4th step, so right in this section. So from top to bottom, the 5th step is just right above it, the risk register. So I'm going to click risk register under the risk menu. And this is a sample plan. It comes installed with Primavera Risk called Example Register EPC. So what I'm going to do is take this and I'll just walk through the qualitative side of the risk register first. Give you a little bit of an overview on the layout. So first of all, you've got a menu bar up top. So from left to right, you've got File, Edit, and basic stuff in here. You've got your copy, your paste. You can set up a risk scoring system, a risk breakdown structure, user-defined fields. Under the Edit menu, the File menu has imports and exports, import to Excel, export to Excel, etc., saving the register and the plan. The View menu has different ways to manipulate just the view itself, so whether you want filters, whether you want to hide certain columns, simplify things. The Tools menu we'll get to more when we're doing the quantitative analysis, but that's actually going to build a risk-loaded Pertmaster plan. And then the Reports menu, we'll do a section on that as well. So we've got 2 tabs, the Qualitative and the Quantitative tab. We're going to concentrate simply on the qualitative side for now. You've got a very similar layout to what you would in the Gantt chart view, really. You've got a navigation pane. In every column that you can get up here in the column view, you can get down here in the navigation pane when you select something. So if I select design changes, the cause, the description, the title, effect are all down there in the risk details. So just kind of going left to right, there's some of this, it's really when you're tracking risk, there's no right or wrong way. Well, possibly there's wrong ways, but there's really, at the end of the day, you're getting a list of risk and you're tracking the attributes that are important to you or your organization. There's certain things that we recommend tracking, but there's you don't necessarily have to put a cause, effect, and at the end of the day, a risk register or risk log is as simple as here's a list of risks. So the columns that I feel are especially important, we'll just discuss left to right. First is this T/O column, and that's threat or opportunity. Now, threats are negative risks. That's what everyone thinks about. Oh, let's make sure bad stuff doesn't happen. And one train of thought is, a lot of projects don't finish early because we don't take the time to look at the good stuff that we could make happen. We're only tracking the bad stuff and trying to stop that from happening. So we fight off as much evil as we can, but we don't help the good stuff happen. So the T and O, threats or opportunities, you'll notice in most projects they really don't track opportunities like they maybe should. You've got your title. Now you get into your scoring system. We're going to set up the scoring system in just a moment in another module. But this is a drop-down box that comes in from the scoring system. So when you're doing a risk workshop, often on a qualitative risk workshop, you would say, well, is it a high, medium, low probability of occurrence? And you're trying to get the risk put in a bucket so you can get them in a tolerance level. So now a lot of this might not be enough information to do a full quantitative analysis. We might need a little more info because, say for example, if I put it in the high bucket, which is 50 to 70%, there's a big difference between 50% and 70%, but at least we're getting it in the bucket. Same thing on this particular one. High schedule risk is 50 to 150 days. I mean that one is particularly huge. That's The difference between 51 days and 149, you're not even in the same ballpark anymore. So that's kind of saying anything over 50 days. Well, for a schedule risk analysis, I really need to quantify those numbers more. So that's when we get to the quantitative side. So these numbers are coming from our scoring system, and this will kick out a score for us. So say, for example, these three in red, unacceptable level of risk. We need to mitigate those. The yellows are generally, hey, we really do need to analyze these and see what they do to us, because it's very likely those could end up in an unacceptable level based on the analysis. Generally anything in green, it's assumed that's kind of under the radar, and the project team could possibly manage that, or we're going to be able to take care of that, or it's not a big enough impact to really hurt us. So we'll get to the scoring system in another module. Now you've got some mitigation responses as well. You've got a mitigation tab down here also. So there's a check mark button to use detailed actions. So I can come through here and put down detailed actions in terms of my mitigations as well. It's really important to track your mitigations on this. We'll go into that in more detail as well. Now you do have a pre-mitigated position if you did nothing about risk, and then you have a post-mitigated score based on doing something about that risk. So like I said, we will get into the mitigation section of the risk register in another module, but you can outline detailed steps, and there's a tab down there for that. Going left to right, the rest of these text fields here, it's kind of as much or as little information as your organization chooses to track. There isn't a right answer for that. The risk breakdown structure, owners, risk breakdown structure is really for reporting purposes too. You've got a lot of data, being able to separate out some of these things. So say, for example, I've got a simple breakdown structure here. I could do it by safety, political. I could anything that you can think of. That's one of those things that's a bit open-ended as well. But putting in a risk breakdown structure. So if I said, well, I only want to see procurement risks, I could pull those out. Or I only want to see downstream oil and gas risks. However my breakdown structure is. The risk status is very important because if you've got any of these closed statuses, it won't carry over to the quantitative section. Once you close a risk, you can't model it into the analysis. So you do have manageability and proximity metrics. I won't go into that right now, but it allows you to put a factor on the score, basically, and a multiplier. So if you said something was incredibly difficult to manage, it might multiply that score and raise that up. You do have a start and finish date for a risk. That one is fairly critical, or is pretty important. Because something like a freezing risk, you'd want to quantify when that season is and what have you, because those risks in a schedule risk analysis, you shouldn't be able to have those fire in the summer, for example. So putting a start and end date, it's also going to help you see when your cost exposure is or what have you. Now, that's the risk window when it can occur. We're going to actually take and link these risks into the schedule risk analysis. So we're going to link them to an activity. So they're going to occur based on the logic in the network. But if it's a winter risk, it shouldn't be. If the activity pushes that risk period into summer, it shouldn't be able to happen then, etc. The show and quantitative section. If you uncheck something in here, it won't show up on the quantitative side. You can't model it into the network of activities. It doesn't show up at all. The quantified tab we won't mess with on this side, but on the quantitative side, that's where we'll look at that more. And then you've got your code fields as well. So once again, it's as much or as little information as you want to track. You've got your details and all of that down at the bottom. The one thing you can't get to at the top are these mitigation steps. So these mitigation steps, it allows you to see how your risk is going to burn down over time, and we'll do a module on that. You also have a risk history tab. That risk history tab is going to show you the changes that you've made to this risk register. So if I make a few changes, save the plan, it's going to show me what I've done to that. So just a quick overview of the risk register. Real simple. It's data entry. There's just not that much to it. It's how you use this and the theory behind it that's really important. So the mechanics are simple. When I get something that I want to, I can export this risk register. So I've got import and export. So if I want to export this risk register as an Excel file, I can do a test, save that to the desktop, and it's going to save it out in the exact same format. I can edit this in Microsoft Excel now, and if I want to re-import it next month to the analysis or the next time, you can see now it's in Microsoft Excel. So you've got the import and the export there. So generally, whatever our reporting period is, we export a copy of the register and save that. So you can do the data entry directly in the risk register here, or I could do it in Excel and then import the risk register. It'll replace what's in there. So the process and the document control is up to the organization. However, there is no database backend. This isn't a collaborative tool. This is one person in at a time, one person editing. There's no database backend, no multiple users. So that's up to the organization to come up with a way to do that.